list so far, of course, talking about the officers in the George Floyd case, Petito and Schmidt versus Laundrie. Are we ready for the top three? Ready for number three? Okay, let's move on to the list to Peter's Lawyer You Know's top 5 court cases of 2022, number 3 on his list. This was one that was perhaps, you could make the argument that of the 5 on this list, this is the one that is the most controversial, and that, of course, being the sentencing trial for the Parkland school shooter, who I'm not going to mention by name on this stream. By now, we have heard his name enough. He doesn't deserve it. So his death penalty trial that took place this year, of course, it spanned many, many months, and it culminated with this massive decision. It needed unanimous consent among the jury. It was not unanimous. One person reportedly did not agree with handing out the death penalty. Why is this your number 3 court case of the year, Peter?
I'll do my best not to mention his name, but I will say it. Yeah, I've said it on my video, so sometimes it's hard when I start talking to mention it. But
understood.
Only in a negative tense, right? If it does come out. So this one was super interesting to me because it highlighted Florida's death penalty process. Because each state that still has the death penalty, there's a little bit of a different process. And you mentioned it has to be unanimous. One started out against. It seemed like it may have moved or grown to 3, but at the end of the day, they did not get unanimity on the death penalty. We heard from the jurors. We heard from the victim's parents. We heard a lot post-verdict in this case that asked the question to Florida and other states, if not this case, then what case is appropriate for the death penalty? And I think it's a fair question. If we're going to have it, whether you're for the death penalty or against it, what kind of case is necessary? And are these jurors in the jury selection process? If you're going to say, if you're one of the people that does not believe in the death penalty, does not agree with the death penalty, that's perfectly fine. But you are disqualified from being a juror on a death penalty phase trial like the Parkland shooter case. So was that what the juror was going into it? Do we have an issue with the jury? It doesn't seem like it at this point. But this case also added additional intrigue when we got to the judge and the defense attorneys kind of going at it a little bit. And people had some comments about that. And the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers actually wrote a letter to the chief judge. And then you had the judge hugging the prosecutors at the end of the case. And all of this is being live streamed for people to watch and seeing it for the first time. So they have questions about the impartiality of this judge. And we're learning and understanding how judges are humans too. They have emotions too, and how they act. Does it affect the case? Does it not? And I think a lot of these trials, and we're going to get to some even more in the future in our list here, that the judge is a highlight and somebody that people are really paying attention to as we live stream these trials. Not just the parties, not just the witnesses, and not even just the lawyers.
I have started a poll, and I'm going to ask you this question, Peter, and you can answer or you can choose not to. It's totally up to you, because the big uproar after the decision was reached, after the jury read the verdict, and of course the verdict in and of itself was very, very long and a process in and of itself. People were questioning whether or not the process works. Florida's system for the death penalty, 12 jurors, correct? It was 12 jurors, if I remember correctly, and 11 concluded that the death penalty was the appropriate sentence, one saying that it was not. And there was a lot of talk as to whether, in the legal community and just with people that aren't attorneys or lawyers, as to whether or not the system works, whether or not one person not agreeing with the other 11 on that jury is proof that the system works because it has to be unanimous, or if it's one person dictating really the outcome and the fate of a person when the other 11 see it one way, when it's not even a majority or super majority, it's almost unanimous. So we've launched a YouTube live poll. This is only on YouTube Live, in our YouTube comment section, asking whether or not you think, with what happened with the Parkland school shooter sentencing and the death penalty trial for the Parkland school shooter, whether or not you think it's proof that the system worked as it should, or it doesn't work, and that this was a litmus test for that system. What's your take on it, Peter?
So my take is pretty simply, if you're going to have it, this is the way you have to do it. And unanimity is not only in death penalty phase cases. Anytime you have a criminal trial, you've got to have a unanimous verdict on the guilty verdict. And the reason for that is we need to be sure.
It's how we get hung juries.
Right. And it happens. It happens all the time. And it's happened to us before. And it's very difficult when you wait for days for a verdict and they keep coming back saying they can't get it. And the judge charges them to go try to figure it out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, death is different, number one. That's the saying. Death is different in the legal community. So we have to make sure that we are sure about it. And then the saying that you'd rather, 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man get convicted and put in prison or be put to death. And as hard as that is to hear, and especially for the victims in the case, we have to make sure. That's why it's beyond a reasonable doubt is the burden. And that's why we have to be unanimous on guilty verdicts and on the death penalty verdict. What's different about this is, right, there's no hung jury. It's just no death penalty.
Yeah,
they don't get to do it again. Yep. Exactly, which that's the difference from the hung jury. We get to do the trial again. It's a mistrial. The state gets another shot at trying to convict the defendant for the crimes they believe that they've committed. In this case, they don't. It just comes back as life.
And this is it. There is no appeal process. It was decided in this trial, and that is it. It's final.
Outside something very unexpected or something that we don't know, like jury fraud or something like that, a plant on the juror that, flipped everything and they figure out Nicholas Cruz's family paid them to get outside of some unforeseen circumstance like that. Yes, it is most likely he's going to end up with life in prison.
We are going to put some comments on screen using either hashtag HeyJB or hashtag lawyer. If you use one of those hashtags with your comment, we can animate it on screen. And we're going to ask you again, the question, do you think that the process was proved in this case? Does the process work or does the process not work as far as Florida's death penalty system? I'm going to we'll bring up Deborah's comment on screen saying, hashtags for both, Parkland was horrible from beginning to end. Mo says, hashtag KJB, when dealing with ending a life, it should only take one voice to save them. Did he deserve it? That's a very different story. So that's a very insightful comment from Mo. And then I believe that we had Nick Rose. Hashtag KJB. I think he needs the death penalty for that crime. And Nick was not alone. A lot of people felt the same way, that if somebody can go into a school and massacre students with no regard for human life, does not get the death penalty, killing kids doesn't get the death penalty, then what should get the death penalty?
That's the interesting question to me. I mean, the system to me is not perfect. Are we going to agree with every result? No. There are multiple results people probably didn't agree with just in the 10 trials we've talked about so far, including the 2021 trials. That doesn't mean the system doesn't work. And Nick's not alone. A lot of people on the jury agreed with him, right? I mean, so it's really a difficult situation, and Mo's awesome. And a lot of the people that have commented that we've seen questions on, that's what makes YouTube so awesome, is this interactivity that we can get these questions and comments and talk through it with people in a respectful way so we can all learn together and understand that something that's not perfect doesn't mean that it doesn't work. And I think this situation highlights what's the death penalty for then. And maybe it's a discussion that Florida needs to maybe edit some of the criteria around.
Our YouTube poll, the results are live. 70% right now says it's proof that the system doesn't work. 30% saying it's proof that the system does, in fact, work. All right, let's take just a very, very brief timeout to remind you that we are paying attention to your top court case of 2022. We want to hear from you. And so if you click on the link in the description on this video, you can cast your vote for the top court case of 2022. A couple of big ones still to come on Peter's list. And we're, of course, going to be paying attention to the live results that are coming in on WFLA.com or on our Nexstar station website app, whatever. You might be finding us in a lot of different places. We're across the country right now on a lot of different Facebook pages. And we want to let you know, if you click on the link, you should see the poll. It's a one-click poll. You don't have to sign up or anything or give your email. You hate that when you have to like sign up and give your address and phone number, 5 clicks. And then it's like, you forgot to fill out this field. I hate that.
It's the worst.
Trust me, you don't have to go through any of that. You just click on the link, one-click poll, you vote, you come right back to our stream and join us as we continue the countdown of the list. And let me just quickly bring up some of those results because Peter is pretty close right now. The Parkland school shooter finished at 4 on our voter list, and Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie, that court case finished at number 3. So kind of flip-flop there.